to Horsefly Chronicles Radio with Julia and Philip Siracusa, sponsored by Carnation, airing live on the United Public Radio Network on 105.3 FM in New Orleans. This show's entrance has been edited, produced, and directed by Gwen Clapper from Perfect Trust Productions, LLC. You can find us at perfecttrustproductions.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monday night's segment of Horsefly Chronicles Radio with myself, Julia Siracusa, and Phil Siracusa. We're broadcasting live from the International Public Radio and the United Paranormal Radio Network on 105.3 FM from New Orleans. This evening's show is fully sponsored by Carnation, so we want to thank them for their sponsorship. You'll have to do a few things in order to participate. Go over to our YouTube channel, UFO Paranormal Radio, or International Public Radio. You can also go into all the Facebook stations, UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Undercover with Joe Montaldo, News on the Flip Side, Twitch, SoundCloud, and Podbean. And you can also go over to our group, Horsefly Chronicles Radio. Join if you haven't. And if you have any questions for our guests, please ask. Tonight, guys, we have a really, really amazing guest. So please welcome Victoria Osborn to the show.
Hi.
Hi. Growing up in the foster care system, Victoria had the unique ability to experience many different roles and to quickly adapt to her surroundings. She knew as early as her preteen years that she wanted to be someone that would help people. For a long time, Victoria kept her gifts for seeing and sensing entities in spirit a secret. Victoria is a paranormal investigator and a magnet for paranormal. She's also a radio host and an author of the Blood Mood Chronicles, which contains 100 pages of interviews with paranormal and horror celebrities. She's also an advocate for mental health, a voice against suicide and abuse, and you can find all of her books on Amazon.com. So please let's welcome her to the show.
Welcome.
Yay!
I am so excited and a little bit nervous being here.
Oh, well, I'm always nervous. It's all good. So, Victoria, tell us, take us from the beginning of your story. Take us to your childhood and your career, and then what drove you into the paranormal.
Okay, so what first drove me into paranormal is when I was about 3 years old, I had a friend, and I described this friend to my mom, and it ended up being her mom, who had passed away when she was 17. And I could see her perfectly in the outfit she wore that they buried her in. And I described it perfectly to my mom, which, kind of disturbed my mom a little, but she was so open-minded about the paranormal and everything, because when she was 16, she had a group party with other teenagers and stuff, and they were drinking a little, but they had an Ouija board, and she said that somebody came in and pissed off whatever spirit they were talking to, and the planchette flew across the room and hit the guy in the face.
Wow.
So she was very much open-minded to paranormal, but it also kind of scared her a little because of that experiment.
Mm-hmm.
But then she could also throughout her life, she had this ability, which was actually something that would really irritate me about her, because she had this ability of calling me in her mind.
Oh.
So, like, instead of picking up a telephone to call me, she would wake me up in the middle of the night in my dreams to call me to her. And I would be like, what do you want? Just use the phone.
Oh, my goodness.
But she'd passed away in 2014. And I did get to visit with her after she passed away one more time. Which I'm skipping a whole bunch of stuff there to tell you about that. But basically what it was is I astral projected to another plane. And I sat with her in another plane, which I cannot do on my own. I cannot astral project on my own. It's always been, I've had it happen like several times, but it's not like I can will it. I wish I could.
Okay.
That's interesting. So 3 years old. That's amazing. And a lot of people that we interview through adolescence, that's their first signs where they see the other side. And
yeah, it always starts. It always
Yeah.
starts when you're young, most of the time. Yeah.
I gotta turn you up a minute, guys. I can barely hear you.
Oh, can you hear us?
Oh, I can now. I
Okay,
hope I'm
good.
not echoing.
Okay, good. So, what inspired you to write your books? You have amazing interviews and a lot of known actors and celebrities that you interviewed in your books. Like, what inspired all of that?
Well, I had a show for 3.5 years with now somebody that's an ex-friend. So I don't want to get into details on that because she's not here to defend herself.
Okay.
And but her and we parted ways and it ended the show. But I was still very much friends with everybody that I came onto the show with. And so I was going to do this event called, it was the DeadCon event. And a person there, what I was supposed to do was a flyer for the show, but I got confused and I thought he said magazine. And so he's like, no, just a flyer. But I'm like, well, why not? Let's do a magazine. I mean, why not? And so he was like, well, if you want to do it, go for it. And so I was like, all right. So I started doing it, but then DeadCon unfortunately kind of flopped. And I was like, well, it flopped, but my magazine's not gonna. So I just changed the name of the magazine and went from there. And now I'm just about ready to publish volume 3 of the BloodCon Chronicles.
Wow.
So
that's amazing. Who did you interview? Can you say anybody's name?
Well, here's the first one. And I'm not sure if you recognize this dude, but you should be able to recognize this one.
Can you see
it?
Yeah, I'm not sure who that is.
Yeah, we just can't really see.
This is the Tales of the Crypt, the Crypt Keeper.
Oh,
okay.
John Cassier, he was the voice for the Crypt Keeper. And he was also he's been in lots of different movies throughout stuff. And so he was one of them. And John Dugan from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, he's going to be in volume 3. I have the Hellraiser, some of the cast from the Hellraiser that's going to be in volume 3. And volume 2, I have this sweet lady. This is Laura Bertram. She is, I'm pointing to the wrong person right here. This one. She's I don't know if you recognize her from Andromeda. She was, I mean, that's not really horror or anything, but I'm also a sci-fi geek, so why not? It's my magazine. I can do what I want with it. But also I have, in both of these magazines, I have 3 actors in each of them from The Walking Dead.
Wow.
Including the late Mosley, who had passed away. Unfortunately, he was killed. But I have an interview, one of his final interviews I did, and it's in this Blood Moon Chronicles, the volume 1.
Wow.
So unfortunately, he was the pet. He was one of the pet walkers.
Okay.
So,
wow, that's really good. Good for you.
Thank you. Thank you. They're all wonderful, amazing people. So, and you'll get to read their stories.
That's awesome. What can you share with people about paranormal? If someone was to ask you, do we go on after this journey? What would you say?
Yes, we do. We our soul's eternal. That means they always have been and always will be. just our flesh suits is what dies away, but our souls go on. Now, I believe that everybody has a right to their own beliefs. Okay, so I'm not going to ever force my beliefs on anybody. However, I personally, like I said, I personally have been, I've astral projected, I have been to heaven 3 times in my life. One, the first time was when I was 5 and I died.
Wow.
And I was there, and I don't remember a lot about it, only the feeling of it, like a peace that you cannot imagine ever feeling, no matter how peaceful you are on this earth. And I kind of remember like somebody comforting me on that one. The second time I was 7 and I attempted to kill myself. I was going through horrific child abuse and neglect at the time, and you know, I wanted to die. Of course, at 7 years old, I really didn't have the idea or the means to do it. So I was thinking I would suffocate myself, which the only thing that really does is weaken yourself, because once you can't breathe, you release.
Yeah.
So, but an angel had came, and or what I presume is an angel, and that was my first time that I remember the trip up. The like when I was 5, I didn't really remember the trip, but the second time I really remember the trip up, and I remember like being very aware of my surroundings and seeing things that I would have never naturally known to describe that as 7 years old. And then when I got up to this place, this other realm, it was like I was looking through it through the wrong prescription glasses. Like you couldn't really make out everything really well. And the same thing happened when my mom had passed away. I was really, really, really upset because I felt like my relationship with my mom was very, very, very difficult because of the abuse. She was diagnosed as paranoid schizophrenic, but not until way after I was an adult. So I went into foster care because of the abuse and neglect that I was going through with my mom. And so we just really didn't have a good relationship until the last few years of her life. But I still didn't never tell her that I forgave her. I never did. And at that point, and I'm going to cry. At that point, that was really, really something that was very important to me.
Yeah.
And I just asked God, I just like, God, please just give me one more minute with my mom.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cry. Okay, this is silly. I'm alive. I'm live.
I'm so sorry that you had to go through all of them.
Well, when I asked God for that one more minute, I left my body and I could feel myself going up, and I felt myself go through the walls, the ceiling and everything. And I was seeing things like the same way as I did when I was 7. I was seeing very detailed stuff until I got there. And when I got there, this time, everything was blurred up except for this one little area where my mom was sitting. And my mom was new. Like she looked like she did when she was 16 instead of grown. And her nose was fixed because when I grew up with her, she had a broken nose, so it was always crooked, and she had messed up teeth, but everything was perfect. Everything was fixed again. And I spent however much time I needed with her, like, because there's no time is no concept up there. You have to understand, you get the amount of time you need. It's okay. So then when I came back down and I looked at the clock, it literally was 1 minute, but up there it was however long I needed.
Wow.
That's awesome that you had that experience.
I mean, it's sad. It's a very sad
It's
story,
sad,
but
we go on.
Yes.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you had an experience like that
Yeah.
too. So
so I can relate to what you're saying.
I'd love to hear your experience sometime. That'd be wonderful.
Definitely. Yeah. It's amazing, and we can contact. What's your thoughts on reincarnation?
I believe in reincarnation. My son is reincarnated. And I am a Christian, sort of. I don't really want to say the word Christian because I'm not a hateful, vindictive, judgmental person. But I'm a believer of Jesus Christ. And I believe in the Bible, but I also believe that if everything was put in the Bible that ever happened, the Bible would be bigger than the Empire State Building. So there is things that we need to learn on our own. And I believe that God put that there so that we can be thoughtful people, to think. He wants us to be thinkers and to have our free will to interpret the way and it would not make sense for us to be eternal beings and only be in this life for maybe 75 years at the max. That makes no sense at all. It does make sense to be able to come back. Now, I don't believe we come back into animals or rocks or trees or anything like that. I believe a human can reincarnate to another human. I also believe that has a lot to do with what's going on with transgender.
Okay.
Because our souls are not sexual. Okay. We just get plucked into whatever bodies we're born into. So if you're an eternal being and you've lived multiple lives on earth and you've lived multiple times as a woman, and then suddenly you're born as a man, you might feel like you're in the wrong body.
Right. That makes sense. I never thought of it like that.
That's interesting.
I've never ever thought of it like that. Wow. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, I never heard of it like that, but that's a different way of putting it.
It is.
Do you think that the soul can change bodies once it's in the physical realm?
You mean like can I jump out of my body and go into yours?
Yeah.
I would love that because I would definitely be grabbing me a skinny body. I think when we're in these meat suits, we don't remember a lot of things.
Yeah.
I think there's a cloud, like a veil that's put on, and like how they say that we only use maybe 10. Sorry, my hand die hand. So we use maybe 10% of our brain, and I think the reason why is the rest of that part of our brain is the key to the universe, basically. Like, I mean, I think that once we pass away, we're going to be like, whoa, oh, now I get it. You know what I'm saying? We're like all these separations of different languages. I don't think that's an issue out there. I think whenever you talk to a spirit, I think they will talk to you in English no matter where they're at if they wanted to, because I feel like once we've passed, we know all languages.
Okay.
Like there is no barrier there. And the ability to choose to be reborn again is also given to us. But right now, while we're in these bodysuits, we're kind of limited to where we are. And I think that is because of the fact that that door's not open to us. Like our brain hasn't kicked into that. We don't know how to do that yet until we're passed away and that veil is removed.
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean,
I would definitely agree.
That makes sense.
What's the best form of communication when you're doing an investigation that you feel is the most validating?
Well, other than our own human senses, which I really truly believe we need to be keen into that, because I believe that everybody has that sixth sense. Some of us just don't know how to, activate it. And then there's other people that just like any gift, like some people have great sight and other people doesn't. It's the same thing with that sixth sense. And so other than our human bodies, because we should listen to that, then I also believe that the digital recorder is amazing. That is I like the ghost box except for the white noise. The white noise drives me nuts. But I like the ghost box because you can talk to them and you can get an instant response. But that digital recorder that you're carrying around picks up everything, the things that, you know, you don't hear.
Yep. And we always talk about that. I mean, it's very old school, but you know,
I think it's the best method
the
as
best,
well.
and you don't really need to
It's
go.
the most truthful method.
Yeah, and you don't need to spend all this crazy money on all these things when you have that.
You know, what's your thoughts on people that say they talk to celebrities through these spirit boxes? There's a couple of people out there on YouTube, well known, and they say they had a conversation with Michael Jackson and, you know, or Marilyn Monroe. You know, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, they're spirits as well. However, this is how I'm feeling about that. I feel like a lot of people take advantage of situations. And I feel like if a person died and you're instantly talking to them and the family is still in grieving, I think that's wrong.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's just super wrong.
Yeah.
Now, and I don't feel like Michael Jackson is just going to come and hang out with me. You know, I mean, I would love to talk to some of the celebrity spirits, but I feel like they're, as with any spirit, they're going to hang around with who they know, like, you know, or who's connected to them, or, you know, like if I went to Michael Jackson's house and set up a session, maybe I would talk to him, but
because that's his house.
Yeah, but to say that he's coming to my living room to have a conversation with me and we've never met in real life, I find that hard to believe.
Right.
You know,
I agree.
These people saying that, I think they're using us, they're using the situation for their personal gain, and I think that's wrong.
You know what? I agree with you. I mean, I'm watching this one guy. He has like 1 million listeners.
Yeah.
And he's talking to Elvis Presley. In my mind, I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
You're not talking to Elvis Presley. I mean,
well, are we in agreement that Elvis Presley's even dead?
And then the next week was Robin Williams. And,
I mean,
you know, so one person, ironically, can speak to the whole celebrity world that's crossed over. I'm not buying it, but his listeners are buying it. That's for sure.
But Victoria's right. I mean, when they cross over, you would think that they would want to hang out with their family and be with their family, and you know, it's hard to believe. Not saying that it's not true, but it is very hard to believe.
Right, and I'm sorry, but yeah, and there is probably millions of people that listen to him, but then there's millions of people that listen to our president too.
Yeah.
You know, whichever president is, I mean, there's always going to be people that will fall for anything, unfortunately. And some people, and some of those listeners, they really just do it for entertainment too. I mean, I don't think that there's 1 million people that are that dumb. I'm hoping not. But I do think that they do.
I do. I think there's way more than that are dumb.
Yeah, he would definitely say that.
I do.
Oh,
and that's a fact.
That's a whole nother show.
Yeah, I do. 1,000,000% I do. But I do know, and I do agree with you that the best form of communication with the loved one is first ourselves.
Yeah.
And how I experience that is through music. When you hear a song come on the radio after you were thinking about the person or they were in your dream the night before, and you could feel the vibration of the song and that person. There's that connection. Also, certain scents, or you see a picture that brings, you know, you just happen to run into certain things, the butterfly, the birds. There's always that sign, and then you have to listen to the signs, and you got to feel it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I 100% agree with you. But also, when a person dies, and I know this 100% for a fact, of course, I'm not there's no proof of paranormal activity, but I've seen this. I've taken care of the elderly since I was 14 years old. And so I've had many people passes, and I've dealt with death a lot. And what I've noticed is that for the first 30 to 60 days after a person dies, their spirit is felt everywhere. I feel like they go and they check on every single person that they know or loved in those 30 to 60 days before they finally settle down. And I don't feel like, people say a house is haunted and blah, blah, blah. I don't feel like anybody is trapped in any place. Okay. I feel like they choose to settle in a place, but they don't have to be there at all. I feel like they, we all have free will that still exists when we're dead. It's our souls that have that free will to come and go. But within the first 30 to 60 days, they do make their rounds. And you will feel them the strongest and the best evidence you can have is during that first 30 to 60 days. Unless there's a traumatic event. And then you might be seeing what I call a spiritual fingerprint.
I agree with you.
Yeah, so do I.
I agree. I've lost quite a few friends in the first 30 to 60 days. I got the sign.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely agree with that. Having said that, what's your thoughts on the Mandela effect? And I say that because somehow it twists into the whole paranormal.
You'll have to remind me on what the Mandela effect is right now.
Well,
sorry.
That you think were.
But
all right.
Word that are.
Symbols, pictures, from, like certain logos. And I guess the way they describe the Mandela effect is that we slip through different dimensions and we don't even realize it in the physical realm. We're not even realizing what's happening. So when you think back, you're like, no, it was this way when it was really another way. And I find it fascinating. Like Mandela, they thought he died. They insisted he died in I believe the 80s, and he didn't die up until the 2000s. But they were convinced that he died from remembering it, but he didn't.
Oh, I mean, as far as paranormal, different dimensions, we would have to be very, very egotistical to think that we're the only dimension in this great big realm of everything. In fact, when we pass away, we're going to a different dimension right then. As far as slipping into multiple, like a multiverse situation, I don't necessarily think that is impossible. I think it's very, very, very possible. I mean, think about the Bermuda Triangle. I mean, people have whole planes have disappeared, and I truly believe that's what happened. They went into a different dimension, and maybe like we might find them later crash, but it always was kind of like a mystical, like, how did this piece get way over here? And so I believe, there's some kind of time warp or parallel dimension that we're dealing with or something. And I always thought that, sometimes things would disappear. They would end up in the past or in the future, now I know somebody that believes very much that he time travels, and I have seen things that hasn't come to be yet. And when it finally comes to be, now, did I have a vision of it, or did I actually time travel to that? I don't know, because when, like I said, outside of the realm of Earth, time doesn't matter. Like when you're up in heaven, or whatever you want to call it, time does not exist. So you can be in multiple places or multiple times at the same time, or, you know what I'm saying, or be in just one, because time doesn't exist. So
you say
absolutely, I don't, Mandela effect or whatever it's called, I don't know. I never know the names of things, but I truly believe that we have just barely tapped into what is paranormal. And there's a great big world out there, and multi-worlds even, of things that we haven't even begun to understand yet.
I agree
And
with
that
that.
Oh, I definitely agree.
There's just what we do is we learn something and then we just end up with more questions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the science of it, really. I mean, even if you want to call it science, people don't want to call it science, but that's basically science is curiosity, and science is, you know, those questions and questions and questions and trying to find results for them. That is science. That's the science of the paranormal.
So what about UFOs? Do you think that they coincide with the paranormal?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, 100%. I mean, if you think about it, God, angels, demons, all of that, technically aliens, because they're outside of the realm of Earth. But to think that we're the only life forms is absolutely ignorant. So absolutely, there's life forms out there, and as far as them being part of the paranormal, well, because it depends, you know, it depends on how you define the word paranormal, I guess. UFOs is definitely something that is para, if you will. They're not a normal situation. They're outside of the realm of normal, but they're very real.
They are. There's way too much evidence to think otherwise.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I actually have a friend that devoted his life on the research of paranormal, and like he's like super scientific about it and got a map and stuff and like has it all laid out and stuff. I can't even, his brain is just too big for me to understand all of it, but I mean but yeah, all the different studies and stuff. And I have another friend who claimed he was taken when he was a kid and his whole family was taken, and I believe that. I believe that happens. I pissed off that I'm not one of them that got taken, but
right?
Yeah.
Wish
I
would
missed
take.
that
What do you think about that?
Well, I'm waiting to be picked up too.
I was just gonna say that. Please come get me. Get me away from these.
I'm just saying. I mean, sometimes a girl just wants a little bit of a probing. Is that too much to ask?
That's funny.
Hey, what's your thoughts on, you know, you mentioned angels and demons. What's your, you know, like hauntings, and have you ever encountered anything that's malevolent?
Angels. When I was 7, and angels what took me up to heaven. And when one time I was homeless and I was staying in this place up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I couldn't move. I would get to that place, and people argue that it's sleep paralysis. The difference is I had that. The difference is I could hear the laughter, and there was a laughter at my feet, and I could see 2 red glowing eyes, and I couldn't move until I finally could scream, Jesus loves me. That was all I could get out of me, was Jesus loves me. And so it went away. The next day it happened again, and I couldn't move. Only this time I couldn't talk. And when I finally was able to talk, I had to think about it, and like I had to really push myself to think about it, and I would do the Jesus loves me song. For whatever reason, I reverted back to childhood, so it always was the Jesus loves me song. And then one point it happened a third day, and before I could run out, this little bitty monster like demon, it was just little bitty thing. I always assumed demons were these great big huge things, but this was little bitty. It come running along, and it scraped his arm around my throat, just like not in the physical, but in the spiritual. And for a week I had no voice in the real life. Like real life, for a week I had no voice at all, and nothing wrong with my throat. I didn't have a sore throat. It wasn't nothing like that. Just I had no voice. And this room, like at one point you could see them crawling up and down the walls, these little demon-like things. And then and they seemed to be kind of in control. And then there was these two bigger ones that came along, and they tried to take me from my body. And I just had this overwhelming feeling that if I got where I couldn't see my body anymore, I wasn't going to be able to get back. And I don't know, maybe that could have been my fears. I don't know, but that was what I was feeling. And so I was like praying to God. And all of a sudden the room lit up with this bright light that was brighter than any light I've ever seen, but I could see fine in it. Like, you know how when you look directly in a light, like your eyes are all like, that was not an issue. And then I saw this form in the doorway, and I have no idea what form was. I'm not going to say what it was. I saw this form in the doorway, and then all of a sudden these little demon beings flew back and were gone. And I was instantly put back into my body. Now, some people argue that was just a really vivid dream. I don't know. I feel like it was a lot more real than just a dream.
Okay.
Wow. Creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that place there was something that I would have loved to have gone in and done investigation for. There was 3 active floors and 1 floor that nobody was allowed to go up. They had an elevator that they had turned off, but we would get in the elevator, and somebody from a different floor would pull us up or down or whatever. You couldn't go in the elevator, and you couldn't hit the button and go to the floor. So if you were on first floor and somebody would go to second floor and hit the button and would go up.
Okay.
So, so fourth floor was off limits. Like, nobody was up there, nothing. But one day I got in the elevator. And the reason why I rode the elevator is because I was very much pregnant. I was like 9 months pregnant. And so, so that was why I rode the elevator. And I lived in third floor. So from the first floor to third floor, that was too much work. So someone would run up to third floor for me and hit the elevator button so I could go up. Well, one day the elevator went all the way up to the fourth floor and deposited me on the fourth floor. There was nobody up there to pull me up. So how did I get up there? And I went in there, and I just had this overwhelming feeling of being watched. And there was no access whatsoever to the fourth floor. I couldn't even go down the steps to get down from the fourth floor. I was stuck. I was stuck there until somebody hit the elevator button to pull me down.
That's creepy. That's scary. Can you imagine?
It was more fascinating to me. I heard, and then I found out that there was a family had gotten murdered up there, and that's why the fourth floor was off limits.
Oh.
But I was like stuck there I must have been stuck there for an hour or so before somebody, because my dummy butt got off the elevator. So whoever that was pulling me up to third, well, I missed it because I got off the elevator and wandered around the fourth floor for a minute because, my curiosity got to me, and I'm like, oh, what am I doing up here? Oh, what's this feeling I feel? Oh, let me investigate. Oh, wow. I'm stupid. Now I can't get off.
Oh my God.
So I was stuck there for a while.
It's interesting. It makes me wonder, certain homes, certain buildings, whether maybe there's suicide or murders, where the spirit doesn't want to move on, or the spirit comes back at certain times, or is it a residual play of the spirit that was that died or was murdered there? Because there's way too many of these stories and experiences that people have where they're talking to the person that died there.
Yeah.
And I say, well, I raise the skeptical questions, of course, because that's what I do. And if there's a reincarnation and there's a heaven, then why didn't the person leave? And then so then we would say, well, because they didn't want to leave. So that in every case and in every haunted house, the same people that don't want to leave. So I don't buy that, but I do buy something you said earlier on the show. Somehow we're here and we're somewhere else. There's a possibility, and I've talked to so many people, that this is not the only us. The meat suit is, but not the spiritual part of us.
Oh, that is truly, a concept. I mean, I haven't really considered it, but that's truly a concept that I would think about, as far as, when someone passes away, maybe their spirits in two different places. That is definitely an interesting concept.
Yes.
I do know that, like I was talking to you earlier about spiritual fingerprints, that you can be alive and leave a spiritual fingerprint somewhere. And let me explain that. People, I don't remember the actual name of what they call it. Residual, I think. People call it residual energy, where they go into it and they'll see somebody reliving, like they're in a loop. And what I believe that is a spiritual fingerprint. And what that is that whenever our souls experience a traumatic event, whether it's death, rape, or even on the good ones, like a marriage, or like a amazing sexual experience, I don't know, something that's so traumatic, good or bad, it leaves a fingerprint, if you will, at a place. And so if you were, like, let's say you were violently raped at a place, someone could come and they could see that, they would keep seeing that event playing and playing and playing, even though you are still alive, because that fingerprint is there. That you can't talk to that, because all it is a fingerprint. That's all it is. And when a person dies, you can have a haunting of an intelligent being at the same place that they have a fingerprint of what happened, and people will count that as two hauntings, but truly all it is one. It's one haunting and one fingerprint.
I like the way they put that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It makes that makes
So
a
then,
lot
do
of
you think a person can be reincarnated, and yet, let's from the 1800s, right? Someone's reincarnated now into our lifetime, but yet you can go to a haunted location where they died, and you're talking to them. Active, not residual, not the loop, but active.
Like an active, I don't know about that. I mean, it's possible, I guess. Again, that would be the outside of the realm of time and space. And beings that our souls technically are outside of the realm of time and space, I think there might be a crossover moment. But I believe, like my son was born. When he was born, he was clearly reincarnated. At first, we thought he had asthma because he kept, but he didn't. There was nothing wrong. But his first year of his life, he was in the hospital, like, for the whole first year, because he couldn't breathe.
Oh wow!
And then later on, when he started to crawl, he dragged one of his legs. Like, it was so bad that I thought there was something wrong with his leg. There was nothing physically wrong with his leg. And then when he was like 18 months, he comes out, and in a very, very manly voice, he said, "Woman, just give me my newspaper and coffee." One, I never had a prescription to newspapers, and at that particular time in my life, I didn't even own a coffee pot. So it was like weird, and just little things added up. And then he started having nightmares, and I would come in there and ask him what his nightmares about. Well, he remembered being a bad father. He remembered being drunk driving. He remembered flipping his car while his two girls were in the back seat, and it injured his leg. He remembered having a gambling debt, and he remembers getting shot in the chest, and that's how he died.
Wow.
And he remembers that it was in a back alley in New York, and he had such a huge, like, major knowledge of planes and stuff, that World War II planes, that we figured out that he was either a World War II pilot or a World War II plane engineer.
There has been so many stories like that, where these little kids come up. And how old is he? When
he's now 21. He's
how
now
old was
21.
he How old was he when he was telling you this?
When he was having the nightmares, it was from the ages of maybe 6 to 10, and then he hated talking about it. Right now he probably, if he can hear me talking to you right now, he's probably pissed off because he hates talking about it. He doesn't like the idea of me talking about the past life. But what I was trying to answer your question about the crossover, I feel like in the first few years when he could remember, it is very, very possible that if somebody went to that location, could still talk to who he was at that time. But I feel like once the crossover completed, I don't feel like it would be like, maybe it wouldn't be the same anymore. Like, it would be different in the conversation.
Yeah. Do you think that before we're born, we chose who our parents, and we also chose our exit sign of when we want to leave Earth?
No. I mean, I think there's people that were volunteered for certain particular situations that we no longer remember, but I don't think that was, I think that was more reserved for angelic presence. And I do believe that some angels are tasked to be born on earth, and that they might not know that they're angels, but they were given the assignment to be born. And I believe those people, or those angels, were tasked to be in a certain family that may not had the best upbringer or whatever. Because I believe, I truly believe that there's angels among us that may not even know that they're angels until a certain time when it needs to present itself. And those ones, I believe, would maybe pick out not the best situations, but like situations that they would have to endure in. But as far as us going, I don't know. I mean, if you think about everybody that's had crappy childhood and stuff, and if they were reincarnated and they could pick, do you really think they would have picked that? So
you wouldn't think. I mean, I wouldn't think so. No.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can't.
It's a hard question.
I like to ask that question. A lot of people have different views on it. But it's up in the open. There's a lot of questions to that question itself,
right. It's one to ponder for sure. It's certainly one to ponder, and it's certainly if when I pass away and I get asked, if it happens and somebody says, "Hey, do you want to be reincarnated to this poor ass family that's going to beat you your whole life?" Yeah, sure. No. I want to be Elon Musk's child.
That doesn't sound right. And a lot of the murders and hideous crimes, and then a lot of people I spoke to as well feel that the person, their soul wants to feel and go through different journeys, no matter what it is, and choose the soul's exit sign in the physical realm. Well, it's a lot of questions why so many people die the way they do, and you question it, like, why? Why would such a good person, for example, a really good person, whether being Catholic or Christian, why would they die in such a horrific way?
Yeah.
If they're following all the right footsteps. And then in the paranormal, when I speak to people, it's because they say they've chosen that as a learning experience. And it's more than we can comprehend and perceive in the physical realm, because we really don't understand it till you cross over.
Right. And
there was a man.
That is part of it. Maybe they're promised a better reward in the afterlife if they choose this path, or maybe it is because they needed that learning experience. It is something that, I'm definitely open to the possibility of it. I'm certainly not going to be closed off to anything. Anything is possible. But I also, I truly believe in free will. Like I said, I believe in God, and Everybody has a right to believe in what they want. And one of the biggest things I hear people say, well, if there's a God, then why does these horrible things happen? Because God is limited by two things. He does not sin, and he cannot break a promise. He promised us free will. Free will meaning I have the freedom to harm my child if I want to, which is a horrible thing, and I never would. But I have that free will. Now all he can do is try to redirect, but he cannot break his own promise. And so that's why a lot of trauma and suffering happens, because I'm not the only one that has free will. Everybody has free will. Everybody has free will to do good or bad. And, that's why a lot of traumatic events happen. It's not that God's sitting up there going, yeah, I really wanted that to happen. No, but because of his promise to us, he has to allow it. The only thing he can do is make the best out of the bad situation afterwards, or maybe even talk to us and be like, hey, maybe you shouldn't go down that road, or maybe, or, I see that the light's green, but don't go yet. And so we got to learn to listen to ourselves and hear that, because that's where he's going to try to tell us and help us to not do that, not go down, because he knows that something's about to happen. I almost got hit by a truck one day if I didn't listen to God. And when he said, don't go forward when the light was green, I sat a few more minutes when the light was green, because I felt in my spirit that I better not go forward. And if I did, I would have been dead, because that truck was going way too fast and went right through the red light.
Wow.
And it was a big truck.
Oh.
So, anyways.
No, that makes sense. Always follow that instinct, and that, like you said, sometimes you just, when you hear the voice telling you, be careful not to do that.
Whether you believe in God or whatever, everybody, I believe, has that voice in them, like you get that feeling.
Most definitely. Yeah. So tell us about some adventures you have coming up and all that good stuff. Like, as far as paranormal and writing and all that stuff.
Okay. Well, I've taken this year off as far as going to like paranormal events and stuff, because like I said, my relationship with my ex-friend kind of ended, and so I've kind of had to reevaluate. I'm getting ready to publish Blood Moon Chronicles Volume 3, which will have some of the characters from Hellraisers on it. We'll have one of the characters from Supernatural is going to be in it. She also was on The Walking Dead. So
that's great.
There will be writings. I'm doing up a writing with a friend in UK. We're going to write about her father, who was a Ukrainian soldier, and he's an artist, so that's going to be featured in the book. And of course, in every volume I have what I call horror fun. So there's like crosswords or like a trivia or some kind of situation going on in it, and there'll be short stories in it, horror fiction stories in it. And also, so that's coming out. And also, I am going to be, within the next 6 months, I want to publish a book called it's Pretty in Blood. It's what it's called, Pretty in Blood, and it's centuries of female killers, and it's going to be the historical stories of different female killers, like Mary Ann Cotton, who was the first recorded UK serial killer, and Jolly Jane, just a whole bunch of different different killers.
Yes.
Of people. I'm going to have Elizabeth Bathory in there, who was the one that she drank virgin's blood because she thought it would keep her young. And and she killed like 650 people. She was royalty. So that
There's
one
a lot of
happened in the
history in that.
1500s. Huh?
There's a lot of history in that.
Yeah. So it's going to be packed full of all these different women. And then, so that one I'm hoping to have out in the next 6 months. And we'll go from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on Horsefly Chronicles Radio.
Yes.
We're at the
thank
top
you.
of the hour, and we really do appreciate it.
Thank
You're an
you so
awesome
much.
guest. And to the listener out there, please share this show. Julie, wrap it up.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Victoria, and special thank you to Carnation for fully sponsoring the show, and we love them. So please join us next week on 105.3 FM from New Orleans next Monday night, and stay tuned for Trish Mo with The Missing Piece.
Everyone have a great, safe night. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Thank you
Bye.
so much.